There are the rules you're taught, and then there are the rules you learn the hard way. School teaches you to raise your hand. Society tells you to speak up, share your feelings, be transparent. But power doesn't operate on those rules. The real world, the one where dominance, respect, and influence are earned, runs on a much darker, subtler set of laws. In that world, the loudest voice is often the weakest, and the man who controls the room rarely says a word. That's the first rule power teaches you if you're willing to see past the noise. Power does not bow to public morality, popularity, or even fairness. It bends to silence, mystery, and discipline. The most dangerous men aren't the ones shouting threats. They're the ones you can't read, the ones who make others uneasy by simply walking in. The ones who say nothing but make everyone else talk more to fill the unsettling silence they leave behind. This is the kind of man people obey without understanding why. And that's what makes him dangerous. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He warned us, it is much safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But most people forget the silent half of that equation. Being feared or respected doesn't come from domination. It comes from presence, from restraint, from knowing exactly when to say nothing and letting others reveal themselves. It's not about being liked, it's about commanding reverence, quietly, calmly, ruthlessly. And in today's world, one obsessed with visibility, with likes, with validation, this kind of power is almost extinct. People can't stop talking, they overshare, they argue endlessly, they crave applause, but every time you speak just to be heard, you surrender power, you give up control, and that makes you predictable, it makes you ordinary. True power comes from control, especially self-control. It comes from being the calm in chaos, the one who watches, not reacts, the one whose value grows with mystery. There is strength in what you don't say, in what you don't reveal, in what you don't allow to shake you. This guide is not for the easily triggered. It's not for the man who needs validation or comfort. It's for the one who wants to walk into any room and instantly shift the energy without opening his mouth. It's for the man who wants to become unforgettable without saying a word. It's for the one ready to dominate through silence. Are you ready to become him? 1. Never complain in public. The moment a man complains out loud, he sends a loud signal to the world. I have no control. It doesn't matter how justified the complaint may be, whether it's about a boss, a partner, the economy, or life itself. What people hear is that you've surrendered power. Complaining, especially in public, makes you look like a victim searching for sympathy instead of a force demanding respect. You become background noise in a world already overwhelmed with excuses and whining. The most powerful men in history suffered in silence, not because they felt nothing, but because they knew that strength isn't proven in ease, it's proven in the storm. The ability to carry pressure without cracking, to endure pain without broadcasting it, creates a mystery around you that makes others wonder, how is he still standing? That curiosity becomes admiration, and that admiration becomes influence. Complaining might feel like relief in the moment, but the cost is steep. Your image, your control, your magnetism. Power is in silent endurance and in walking through fire without telling anyone you were ever burned. 2. Never show insecurity. Insecurity is like blood in shark-infested waters. It doesn't take much for others to smell it and strike. You may feel uncertain, you may doubt yourself in the quiet corners of your mind, but the key is never to broadcast that doubt. In conversations, in negotiations, in confrontations, especially with people who hold leverage or influence, your posture, your tone, and your eyes must say, I belong here. You don't need to fake confidence. You need to control your presentation. Think of power like a mask you wear, not to deceive others, but to protect yourself from their hunger to dominate. When you utter self-deprecating phrases like, "I might be wrong," or "this is probably dumb," but you aren't being humble. You're giving people permission to doubt you, and once they do, it's hard to recover. Powerful men train themselves to stay composed even when anxiety claws at their chest. They understand that perception is reality. If you walk into a room like you're already approved, you change the way people receive you. Insecurity will come, but it must remain your private battle, never your public display. 3. Never announce your plans. Power is a silent architect. The moment you reveal your blueprint, you hand people the tools to block it. When you speak too soon, when you post your goals online or talk about what's coming, you invite sabotage, both intentional and unintentional. People might criticize, mock, or steal. Worse, you shift your focus from execution to validation. You begin performing your plan for applause instead of building it for impact. The strongest moves are the ones nobody sees coming. The next level of your life should arrive like an ambush, not a scheduled announcement. When you work in silence, you take away the chance for interference. You eliminate the distractions of feedback and opinion. And most importantly, you preserve your own intensity because you're not performing, you're progressing. Then one day, you walk into the room and everything is different. They didn't see it coming. That shock, that awe, that's power. The man who keeps his plans private makes everyone else feel unprepared. They're forced to play catch-up while he walks miles ahead in silence. 4. Never take public sides in petty conflicts. Choosing sides in someone else's personal drama might seem like loyalty, but it's often just emotional sabotage disguised as virtue. Publicly aligning with one party in a trivial dispute binds you to their emotional chaos. You inherit their enemies, their grudges, and their instability. And what do you gain? Temporary praise that fades, while the long-term cost compounds. Powerful men don't react to every squabble, they assess. They observe who's impulsive, who's calculating, who's loud but weak, and who operates in silence. Then when the moment is right, they move in ways that reshape the game, not validate it. In every conflict, people reveal themselves. Let them. You don't need to raise your voice to win a war of fools. Your silence becomes insulation, a barrier between your legacy and their drama. When the dust settles, the man who never picked a side is the one everyone now wants on theirs. That's not neutrality. That's dominance through emotional control. 5. Never seek attention. Attention is a drug. It feels good in the moment, but over time, it weakens your sense of self. When you seek it, you become addicted to applause, to validation, to being seen, and that need becomes obvious. People can tell when you're performing. They know when you're exaggerating for approval or dressing for praise. That neediness pushes away real respect. True power doesn't scream, it resonates. The most magnetic people in any room are the ones who don't need to be noticed. They don't force conversation, they don't overshare. Their confidence is quiet but undeniable. Their aura speaks louder than their words. You'll often find that the man who sits in the back, observing, listening, and saying little, leaves a deeper impression than the one desperately trying to be the loudest. Why? Because presence is not about volume, it's about gravity. When you walk like you belong, when you move like you know something they don't, people begin to orbit around your calm. And when attention does come, it's not because you chased it, it's because it had no choice but to follow you. 6. Never crack under pressure. Pressure is not your enemy, it is your test. It separates the fragile from the unshakable. Everyone is thrown into the fire at some point, through betrayal, loss, humiliation, unexpected crisis. But pressure doesn't break the strong, it reveals the weak. The world is watching you during these moments, even when you think no one is. Most people crumble. They scream, lash out, blame others, panic. They lose the room the moment they lose themselves. But you must become the eye of the storm, the calm, unmovable center that others instinctively turn to when everything is falling apart. Stillness under fire is one of the greatest weapons in the arsenal of power. When someone insults you and you don't even flinch, they feel their own power dissolve. When people try to provoke you and you respond with calm detachment, it's not just frustrating to them, it's intimidating, because silence under pressure reveals that you have something most people don't: control. And control is terrifying to those who rely on chaos. The man who remains grounded in chaos becomes a gravitational force. Others begin orbiting him. He doesn't yell, doesn't overreact, doesn't make threats. He just holds his posture and speaks few words. And in doing so, he becomes the leader, even if he's not the one in charge. 7. Never over-explain. The more you explain yourself, the more control you hand away. Over-explaining is often just disguised insecurity. It's the subconscious urge to be liked, to be understood, to justify your decisions so others won't judge you. But here's the truth. Power never explains. Power speaks once. Power is decisive, not defensive. The moment you start defending your words, your choices, your standards, you lower yourself to the level of those who doubt you. Let them doubt, let them question, let them sit in silence, wrestling with their own confusion. That tension, that confusion, that's where your power lives. A man who can sit comfortably inside misunderstanding is unshakable. When someone confronts you, you don't need to give them a monologue. A few words are enough. That's how I see it. Or even simpler, it is what it is. Say less. Let your tone and presence do the talking. And when people can't read you, when your thoughts are hidden behind silence, they become obsessed. They start to wonder what you're thinking, how much you know, what you'll do next. This is how influence grows, not through argument, but through mystique. You don't need everyone to understand you. You need them to wonder what you're capable of. 8. Never show bitterness over rejection. Rejection isn't personal. It's directional. It's life removing what doesn't belong on your path, whether it's a relationship, a job, or an opportunity. But how you respond to rejection determines your value. Weak men take rejection as a wound and bleed in front of everyone. They complain, seek closure, post subliminal messages, beg for attention. But you must not. The moment someone dismisses you, let them. Walk away quietly and completely. Say nothing, show nothing, feel everything privately, but display nothing publicly. That is where true emotional strength is built. Bitterness makes you look desperate. It says to the world, I needed them to choose me in order to feel worthy. That's not power, that's dependency. A powerful man doesn't need to be chosen. He chooses himself. And when someone overlooks him, he doesn't argue with their decision. He simply disappears from their reach. And ironically, it's often in your absence that your presence begins to echo. They remember your silence. They question themselves. They wonder if they made a mistake. And you? You're already moving upward, building, evolving, becoming undeniable. Let your growth become the message. Let your transformation do what your words never could. 9. Never criticize. Power publicly. Calling out powerful people in public might win you applause from the crowd, but it also paints a target on your back. It's a declaration of war, and unless you're fully prepared to finish it ruthlessly, you've just handed them the sword. You may feel morally justified. You may think you're standing up for truth. But in power dynamics, exposure without strategy is suicide. Public criticism triggers defense. It provokes retaliation. It creates enemies who now see you as a threat that must be silenced or removed. The wise man plays the long game. He lets the powerful dig their own graves. He gathers information. He waits. And when the moment is right, he strikes in private, with precision, not noise. History is not shaped by those who shout the loudest on stages. It's shaped by those who whisper in rooms where decisions are made. If you truly seek influence, don't play the moral hero in the public arena. Play the strategist in the shadows. Let the others burn their credibility trying to be seen. You build your legacy in silence. You win your wars without the world knowing you ever fought one. Once you strip away the habits that weaken you, complaining, oversharing, seeking validation, you begin to construct something rare, a myth. And in this world, myths hold more power than facts. People may respect what they understand, but they fear what they cannot explain. When you stop reacting like everyone else, when your presence speaks louder than your voice, you separate yourself from the ordinary. You become a question mark that lingers in their minds long after you leave the room. The most powerful person in any space is not the one who commands attention with noise, but the one who unsettles the room with silence. They observe quietly, calculatedly. They don't rush to speak or explain themselves. They don't need to prove anything, because their very stillness proves everything. That kind of restraint is unnerving to most because it's so rare. We live in a culture of exposure, constant talking, constant explaining, constant signaling. But the one who resists all that becomes a mirror that reflects the insecurities of everyone around them. To embody this kind of power, you must master the art of internal discipline, emotional control, physical calm, verbal precision. Your reactions must be delayed, your opinions measured, your movements intentional. You don't speak because you're afraid. You remain silent because you're calculating. You're letting others reveal themselves while you remain unreadable. The weight of your silence becomes heavier than 1,000 words, and that silence, when used well, bends the room in your direction. So hold your posture even when challenged. Speak less, even when you have much to say. Watch more, even when you're being watched. This is how real influence is built, not by constantly asserting yourself, but by making your presence felt without effort. You don't need to declare your dominance. You simply become the force that others orbit. And remember this, those who control themselves will always have leverage over those who can't, because the man who cannot be provoked, who doesn't flinch, doesn't whine, doesn't beg, is the man others begin to fear, respect, and eventually follow. Power doesn't shout, power waits, power watches, power calculates, and in the end, power always wins.